All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 166th episode of our first YouTube run through the House of Light expansion for Book of Hours. Playing as the archaeologist, I'm System Chalk. We are on our way to leveling up Sky Stories to level 9, and then we should have just enough left over to be able to level up Horns and Ivories. My other expectation is that we'll have about a minute... we'll have one more element of the soul left, and I believe we will have more than the 2 minutes that we normally get before the day is done. So normally I'd want to make sure that I can finish the 90-second event around here, just so I have a buffer. But I think all told, yes. Given the fact that I've got a 30-second timer here, as long as I immediately apply the elements of the soul, and I'm going to double check that everything's the way that it should be, but I believe I should be able to use the remaining FET for maybe Crowcross Sands. I'm not 100% sure what I want to use it for. All right, let's carry on. We'll have some reading to do first. And then, of course, we're going to take Reverend Timothy and get him to open up the Wintry Forbidding. Tomorrow we may use Mr. Kill to open up the Rattling Tunnels, but we'll see where it goes. Okay, so this is where I would start the timer. In this case, we'll say 14 seconds. Better now. We'll earn some money. I don't need to listen to everything Reverend Timothy says. He doesn't really even expect me to, but I'm often glad when I do. I have a feeling there's at least a couple of people who would use that to describe me. My favorite, actually, is usually when I would talk with a professor or something like that, and, kind of rattle off some ideas. And they say, oh, that was really good. Like, could you repeat it? I'm like, no, I don't remember what I said. Okay, Singlefoot songs. Father Stanislav John Schaller, priest and diplomat, writes of his time on the slopes of Huashan, near to the Grove of Green Immortals, but never too near. Schaller's relations with the grove are cautious. It's a library of the tree, but under the hand of the hour-named Applebright. In time, however, Schaller comes to be more sympathetic to the Applebright, which he suggests causes harm only when so invited. The Singlefoots of the title are one-horned, one-footed hill things with sweet but powerful voices, powerful enough to open the mountain. The Singlefoots sometimes trample pilgrims, sometimes heal them, sometimes coerce them to enter the mountain and become Singlefoots. Schaller explains that when he found this last becoming too tempting, he decided to return to his homeland. So that will go with the pattern. Letters from a fugitive. Lars Westergren, explorer and murderer, spent 7 years escaping justice through his knowledge of byways and shortcuts in the bounds. Throughout that time, he wrote regularly to his daughter, possibly in part to taunt his pursuers. I'm also going to just change this up a little bit. A year with the Legion de Sul, patrolling the bounds until he deserts. A month in the Priory of Captains in Morbihan. 7 days, or so he claims, in Ye's Behind the Wave. Cornered at last by his pursuers, Westergren writes that he will attempt the Paths of the Sun. He doesn't seem sanguine about his chances, and indeed this is his last letter. An editor's note adds that Westergren's whereabouts or end remain unknown, although he was supposedly sighted at the Christmas market in Vienna, the negotiations between invisible underworld figures that happen each year there in 1929. Apollo and Marsyas, the libretto of a lost opera concerning the contest between Apollo and Marsyas and its tragic outcome. The librettist is identified only by their initials. In the original myth, Marsyas lost the musical contest and was flayed by Apollo, who later regretted it. In this version, Marsyas' skin has a further history. The skin of Marsyas gives oracles and is later smuggled to Phrygia, where the priestesses of Cybele use it for a drum. At the climax, the striking of the drum drives would-be violators of the priestess to a suicidal madness. The opera ends with a wistful hymn from the youngest priestess on the beauty of mountain pines. Opening the Sky, an unusual recording of Varro's Opening the Sky, composed for the coronation of the new king, Henry IX. The record bears the suppression stamp Expunge. The first movement is soft, autumnal. The second, unsettling, febrile. The third is bright, soaring, rapturous. The fourth movement is glassy, slithering, a tintinnabulous icicle rattle. The fifth returns to the theme of the third, bright and rapturous once again, but this is a choral movement. It becomes apparent, though, that these are much, much too pure and high to be human voices. They recall birdsong. They recall the sweep of the windswept sky, blue turning black at the edge of the higher heaven, and they wrench the heart in a direction the bureau does not permit. In the mountains as upon the plain, there may not be a path where none has passed. Naingala Ablagash describes the secrets to be found in mountains. Naingala tells a number of lively stories about riddling ogres and wars between mountain tribes, but turns somber in the tale of the empty-handed hunter, a lover of the Grail who sought to match her appetites and join her as an hour, but in the end rent and devoured himself, giving his name to the mountains he had once roamed. Naingala claims that the hours who sometimes manifest as birds, the laughing thrush, the ivory dove, the beach crow, and the witch and sister, meet in a secret location on a mountaintop to exchange gossip unheard by their peers. Now and then a mortal overhears them. The mortal is always obliterated, and the meeting place always changed. The Intimations of Skin, fiendishly complex, weirdly distorted illustrations of Congress and anatomy by the haunted visionary painter Niels Frederick Malsker. Malsker illuminates the evolutions of the names of the Grail with unfortunate clarity. It seems that a lovely who consumes an ivory becomes an ivory, a lovely who consumes a thirstly becomes a thirstly, a lovely who consumes a name of another hour might take its place. In the penultimate illustration, a lovely grapples with a fungoid knot that can only be a name of the crowned growth. The lovely's mouth and other portals gape wide, and the growth name is already partially engulfed, but it seems that Malsker couldn't bring himself to illustrate the result, and the final illustration is only a scrawled, bloated obscurity. Traveling at Night, Volume 2, the annotated dream journals of Christopher Olapoli, sometimes called the only readable occultist. Literate, entertaining, bewildering. There's an extensive discussion on the comparisons between Olapoli's own dreams and those of the Emperor Elagabalus, who Olapoli regards as a dupe or avatar of the sun in rags. The white is west of the world, Olapoli remarks, and winter does not wait forever. Elagabalus found his way to the White Door at last, thankfully. Speech can't pass the White Door, and honestly, Elagabalus never had anything very interesting to say. I tried to follow in his footsteps, but I never learnt enough of the White. I suppose I'm thankful for that too, but here's what I do know. An opening opportunity that'll last a little while. The Concursum Diaries, the diaries of the explorer and murderer Lars Westergren. He's unhelpfully translated them into Frisian, for privacy. There are map legends, there are maps of legends, and there are legends of maps. Aspects of the Mansis subsist in all of these, in much the same way that you might find water in a swamp, and in a cup, and in the sky. Westergren describes a series of expeditions into the Mansis. He focuses on the details of the experience, the colors, the vistas, the textures, rather than the practicalities. He does warn that the Mansis changes each year, although he assures the reader that the doors have always been the same. Doors may close, but they never disappear. At least not while there have been mortals in the Mansis. We're like mice. And an introduction to the histories. The 17th century mystic and antiquarian Claude Hersault describes divergent incidents in 5 major histories. The prologue warns at length of the iniquities of one Julian Cosley, a former colleague who Hersault now describes darkly as a worm of worms. It seems Cosley advised Hersault early in the writing of the book, but Hersault later became suspicious. Hersault identifies blood, silver, design, and the worms as the central axes of each of the histories, and claims that the so-called second history is the true one. Okay, so, first things first. Oh, not quite, 0.5 seconds. So, we'll cue this all up. So, this one's going to go to Sky Stories, which should be here. This one's going to go to Doran Wall. Doran Wall is going to be used to level up Horns and Ivories. So we've got Knock, Scale, Scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wait, that's a lesson anyway. Okay, so I don't want to give up anything there. So I need 2 memories, which will come from the core and the Faust. Of those memories, I'm going to want... Well, one of them will probably be Fear, so Leonine Tantra will work there. Uh-huh. Oh, salt. Actually, I guess I could also do deaths and their evasions, but it's been a while since we've done the Leonine Tantra, so. Edge a trophy. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. What am I waiting for here? Eggs of power. The skill is now level 8. Its power aspects have also increased, so put that straight into the next level. There's always more to learn. Improve the skill to level 9. And the easy option here is just to move everything off to the side, seeing as we know it can't go any higher than 9. Okay, we'll also prep Horns and Ivories for position 6. Actually don't know where it's going to wind up, so I'll put it sort of near the top. And then the health's just hanging out here so that we have something ready to go by the end of the day. So we'll clear the 1 minute mark well before sundown. Good. I think we'll do one more chat with Reverend Timothy. The skill is now level 9. Its power aspects have also increased. I don't need to listen to everything Reverend Timothy says. He doesn't really even expect me to, but I'm often glad when I do, so. Don't normally expect a hindsight from him, but I'll take it. Night has fallen. Dawn will come soon. So even at 45 seconds, we know we'll still have time to open the room with Reverend Timothy. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. Kukurbit Prisoner Records. Accounts by Governor Collar's private secretary of interventions and experiments in the last year of the Kukurbit prison, focusing particularly on the hill children, wildwood things that have found a shape in the physical world. Something called a Singlefoot, a horned mountain dweller, is brought back from some kind of embassy to the Grove of Green Immortals. Collars expresses his irritation that Gervinus Van Loren refuses to assist in its containment. The Singlefoot somehow conjures an earthquake that cracks the tower and enables its escape. Collars determines that it should not have been permitted to dream while kept beneath the earth. It had access to sufficient scale aspect to use its arts of hill and hollow to develop an old moment into an earthquake name. He mandates above-ground confinement for all hill children prisoners in the future. And the Leonine Tantra, in the most notorious translation of the Leonine Tantra, Ashley Phillips is listed as the translator, but their existence is explicitly denied in the prologue. This confusion is characteristic of books which mention the Great Hooded Princes. The Tantra describes elliptically the Great Hooded Princes and the multitudinous ways in which they influenced wars against foreign invaders in the land of the Great River, although in a sense they were also invaders. Lions can be created, not as children are created, nor as words are created, but as weapons are created. The Great Hooded Princes learnt to create lions from their spyings on the affairs of the hours, and not all lions now serve the Golden General. Okay, so... boost Coil and Chasm. What am I saying? Coil and Chasm. Boost... Horns and Ivories. At last, I'm something of an authority in this. Improve the skill to level 6. I do find it amusing that I decided to put the point to horns and ivory. Yeah, it still works. Wow. Reverend Timothy's gloomy at the end of the day. All right. A wintry forbidding. Icy mists coil and drift. And my package has arrived. Probably be opening it in the morning, but this skill is now level 6. Its power aspects have also increased. Unwrap, unbox, unleash. Alright, so it's more of the same tomorrow, I think. So we still have one sky left over, and then we'll start working on the knock things. I believe if we're at level 9 with Sky Stories and level 7 with Aronoscopy, this is the point where I start using Furs and Feathers. I'm just going to take a quick minute here to see what my plans were for yeah, so I wrote down Furs and Feathers was the last one. This will make things interesting. Whoa! What? Sorry, for some reason my scratchy handwriting was translated as mathematics. Okay, cool. So yeah, I think I'm going to try and... I'll try with the Furs and Feathers off the top. Don't have too much... I mean, that's not really much of a challenge, right? But it's fine. We'll get through it. So for that, unhatched hymns for 1. Okay, so if I were to focus on the knock side of the equation, surgeries and exsanguinations, which is the one I was sort of ignoring, that's back on the table and arguably less difficult for me to raise up. So I'm also trying to remember where I was going to put that. Presumably that one goes into... Well, I was going to say presumably that goes into Hushery, but I actually think this was the one... I think this is actually going to be a high-level one that I had in Hushery that I never followed through on. So let's just go as high as we can with it. I think it'll be the easy answer. So, the reason I wanted to work that out ahead of time was... Like, so the not Singlefoot songs, the Savage Hymn will not affect surgeries and exsanguinations. If I get fear, same idea, although it'd be nice if I had sort of a scale that I could get that didn't run the risk of being, you know, upstaged by Reverend Timothy. You know what? I'll read Exorcism for Girls. We don't need to make this complicated, so... Okay, so that will cover me for Furs and Feathers. So what we want here are a bunch of Knock and Heart. And at this point, because I think I said I was going to go the whole way with it, let's just try and... we'll generate as much as we can. So yes, I am going to do opening the sky one more time, but this is because we're trying to go as far as we can. 108. Wait. Heart and knock. Okay, so we know what we want there. No heart and knock, no heart and knock. Heart here. Ah! All right, this is the easy one. I'm actually trying to remember how far we went here, so I'm just going to start on advice on containment. This will get me knock. Should probably keep a little more shaft on hand just because of all of the skills that I can level up using it, but I don't think that will be relevant this time around. Okay. Nona's desk is always a bit of a conundrum, but I'll start with core. There's knock, although I just used up the few scenes, so no luck there. I'll generate that through other means. I believe satisfaction gives me... God, I can never remember the order that I do this, so we'll do orchid transfigurations too, because we did that recently. Okay, so that tells me I'm actually out of... short of the thresholds. I feel like I'm shortchanging myself at some point here, but either way, let's take advantage of the governor's desk. I will read Perugian Diaries. And then for the last step, we get the replacement secret threshold. Okay, so yeah, we're already covered for both. Cool. And I think what I'll do here is I'll wait the 35 seconds to see what room opens. I don't need... Oh, hang on. What I'm probably going to do is use the lower level pumps. Although, I mean, I could... Alright. Let me actually just do the math for the battling tunnels. If I wanted to use Mr. Kill to open that up. So 2 winter. Okay, so Whist gives us 4. Wormwood Dream brings us up to 10. Yeah, piece of cake. So yeah, I might as well hire Mr. Kill. Mr. Kill likes conversations about endings. His wife prefers to talk about beginnings. A shilling will buy his help for a day. Just had a spare one lying around. Let's do it. And it's a gale, which will actually help me with the leveling. I'm trying to think if I want another book, because we're short. You know, it wouldn't hurt, actually. So the messenger awaiting her destination is the more difficult of the two. I used up all the desks though, so. Alright, so I'm going to level him up before we start using him for memories. We'll watch for what lies ahead. We may not even wind up using him for memories, but it doesn't hurt to prepare. Unwrap, unbox, unleash. So, lots of tea. I'm going to have a devil of a time trying to figure out where to store all this. Oscillate oil, so that's almost certainly going to get used down below. Umbrus oil and scintillate oil. All right, before I go any further, let's have some fun with this. Did I not buy more metal? Oh, shame on me. All right. That's a mild inconvenience, but not a fatal one. Actually, I wish I could remember which one I think I can just order copper. Alright, these machines are different and of newer manufacturer than the ones above. They include something like a generator too, but they're in even worse condition. I'll need to provide suitable materials and fuel, and I'll need scholar-level forge to jury-rig them. So it feels appropriate to use lockworks and clockworks here, but I need... Oh, actually, hang on. No, it's gotta be forge. That or I need more. So probably bells and braziers, but just trying to think if there's anything a little more on brand. Hammer time. No. Jury-rig the lower level pumps. The machine roars into life. Sparks flicker. This will take a while. And the tea. Alright, what do I do with the tea? We will put one box here. I think I can probably get away with putting one in the kitchen somewhere. Oof, maybe not. Try and make some of that sooner rather than later. Okay, consider verb. I've got 42 seconds, so if I'm willing to wait, I can open up another one of these. Actually, it's the last of these, so it's slightly more appealing. And this time I will use Shapt. What overlooked delight? Treasure stored by a musician's spy. Part of the appeal is, too, it gives me a chance to see what waits behind the wintry forbidding. Okay, the chapel Ascite, the horned axe, says, "Never speak of this mystery. When the Thunderskin was mortal, he served the hours who slew my kind. I required the Thunderskin's death, and so the Grail gave him up. There is always a reckoning, and nothing is truly forgiven." So, one more room, the honeyed forbidding, which will require heart or nectar, neither of which we should expect. Well, I guess technically I could try and hire Mrs. Kill. No, this is not what I want to do. I can see some ways we might be able to make this all turn out, but there are other opportunities that will come up that will be easier. I don't need to put that much effort into it. If we're going to hire Mrs. Kill, we'll get her to open up the wing-haunted cave, if nothing else. So, I do want to catalog these books, but I also want to make sure that my existing tasks have been handled. And I don't think it would hurt for me to try and read. I'm going to try The Messenger Awaiting Her Destination. Also occurred to me, I don't think I slept on the foresight, which would have been nice to have. My assistant and I will be prudent. Okay, here we're going to give him the Wormwood Dream, and from that, we're going to take the Edicts Martial, and I think in this case I'm willing to give up an Arab for it. Nope, I need to give up a memory to... Old Wound it is. Recall a forgotten crime of moon and winter. There's a couple of plans that I had in terms of just being able to use things like fish or drinks with Mr. Kill, but those aren't quite as important right now. I'll work it all out, but I think it's real. I really at this point I just need to get certain things. Well, one, I just need to get some basics down. So I know, for instance, I'm going to use a Wormwood Dream, and I know I'm going to get a. I'm going to use Solomon's Preparation. Once those are out of the way, I have some leeway. Okay, what does not bark? Alexander Probst writes warily of Calyptra, a law, principle, or society which prevents the dissemination of dangerous knowledge. Calyptra, like the planet that occludes the star, or the Doylean dog that fails to bark, can be identified only by its absence. Even the name, I think, must be a mask. Calyptra is said to make exceptions specifically for the libraries of the Watchman's Tree. Does it make those exceptions so the Hours can make use of them? A Pale Lady and a Prince of Wines, an anonymous biography of Ava de Wolf, last of the de Wolfs, focused rather salaciously on her personal troubles and intrigues. Ava de Wolf is engaged to one Abraham Wheellock, but he leaves her at the altar. Furious and humiliated, she returns to Brandkrug and is not seen in London again. 3 days after her departure, Abraham Wheellock's body is washed up near Gravesend. His face is so badly pecked by birds that he is only identified by his belongings. These include a waxed pouch containing a letter addressed to Wheellock, whose contents seem to show he is a spy in the pay of the Austrians. Subsequent investigation suggests that the letter is a forgery, but the matter remains obscure. Lord Franklin Bancroft, sometimes called the Prince of Wines, begins a series of visits to Brandkrug House. His relationship with Ava becomes a source of scandal. Ava is by now 49, but rumors persist for years of a de Wolf and Bancroft heir. Ava's biographer claims that before her drowning death, the child by Bancroft was adopted by her friends, the Southies, and that the child became the sister of the later poet laureate Robert Southey. No real evidence is provided in support of this claim. All right, should be changing the priorities here. The Geminiad, a fragile manuscript illuminated with twin shapes of sad and luminous beauty, and with all the phases of the moon. It might be as old as the 7th century, but the language Fusine is much older. The cover is tooled goatskin, decorated with garnet. These pages outline the nature and the doctrines of an hour that weaves together the willing, an hour that is sought beneath the moon at the water's edge. The sister and witch. The language is willful, naughty, poetic. It will take some untangling. The first volume of the Geminiad reminds us that the sister and witch has been known to manifest as the witch and sister, and that this face is always hungry while the other face may heal. It implies connections between the sister and witch and the hours of the upper Mansus, especially the lunar hour called the Meniscate, but it is ambiguous on whether the sister and witch is a Mansus hour proper, and it speaks at length about the sadness of the two who are one, the sadness that remains from their time as flesh. Advice on containment. Thyrza Blake discusses ways to keep wood things out of trouble and Mansus things in it. Thyrza is irritatingly light on specifics, insisting above all that the duties of an adept are the duties of a host, and that a conjured spirit should be kept in as luxurious a vessel as possible. Thyrza notes the similarities between the lantern-long habit of scrying, returning to the physical world despite their absence of a body, and entering a mirror or light, and Pomander's techniques for confining Mansus-long to mirrors. She wonders whether Pomander himself might be lured to Hush House if provided with a sufficiently alluring scrying. Secret Threshold, an opening opportunity that'll last a little while. The Orchid's Transfigurations of Birth. the second volume of a compilation of quasi-Rosicrucian allegories supposedly by Robert Flood. This is in the original Latin. Flood, or pseudo-Flood, suggests alignments between the alchemical tradition of Rubidoux and the older Grail traditions through the Pine Knight's quest for the Cinnabar Cup. Seek the cup in the birthing bed, the Pine Knight is told. The midwife at the birthing bed, to his amazement, is the Mountain Mother. In a fit of awe, he both gelds and flays himself. The vigilant storm bursts joyfully from the remains. Perugian Diaries. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Lopoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Lopoli has served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good. Certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear this dream of eyes. We've agreed to part almost amicably." Lopoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of the journal is concerned with his studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, in the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of Old Lake Fucinus near Otuccio. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. Unhatched hymns. Hymns attributed to St. Lucia the Eyeless, patron of glassworkers and name of the hour called Meniscate. The hymns venerate every sanctioned hour, celebrating them as the sun undivided, but also suggesting that each hour may become the next, madrigad to watchman, watchman to wolf, and so on. The hymn of the phases celebrates the Meniscate from whom we do not turn, for the truth which is beauty, the beauty which is truth, and the perfect balance between the two. The hymn of the reflections more puzzlingly celebrates the Meniscate as the sister of Janus, mother of shadow, whose visage wondrous in emptiness can reveal all truths. And Exorcism for Girls, simple but forceful techniques for rousting unbefitting spirits, written in straightforward and colorful language. Blake seems uncertain at points on whether the techniques are intended for use by or on girls. She clearly regards children as a nuisance. Theirs' advice for the shapeless wood things known as raw prophets is typically practical. 1. Discourage them with buckets of water as close as possible to freezing, and with the smoke of dried lemongrass. 2. Under no circumstances kiss them or receive kisses from them. 3. An effective formula is provided for laundering clothes stained with prophet slime. Okay. So, while I'd like to get Furs and Feathers leveled up, the only thing I really need to worry about is the fear being overwritten, whereas I'm probably going to want to make as much as I can with surgeries and exsanguinations. So we still have 16 seconds, but basically I'm going to park that here, and instead we're going to focus on this one. So if we do Storm, Solace, Satisfaction... I need 2 more, so we'll do Secret Threshold and Cheerful Ditty. Okay. And then I wanted the messenger awaiting her destination. I'm going to see if I can do that, but this has gone longer than I'd intended, so I think I'll leave it here. We'll start what should be Friday's episode with queuing up the messenger awaiting her destination, or at least as close as I can get. I could use the Orpiment Exultant, but I'd probably prefer to use that for other things. And I will also see what time I have left to start recording some episodes for where I'm going to be away, but I will save that for another time. All right. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you in the next one.